Good morning, gamers! I'm Sichuan the Spicy Lad, here to fulfill one last promised video topic before the now impending release of
Deltarune Chapter 5!
Chapter 5. That being the original game. Something that really only RAM directly talks about in the current 4 chapters, of which its description and acknowledgement is a pittance for how much there is of it and what it seems to be about. To remedy the present lack of explanation behind the concept, I'll be explaining it myself, going over what we know, what we believe, and can otherwise observe, then cover various interpretations regarding it. Also, as a heads up, I will be pulling subject matters from my other videos that were made recently, so y'all are more than welcome to watch those if you haven't, but this video shouldn't get many of y'all lost, unlike many of the original game's inhabitants. So, nestle in your favorite couch, give your comfort game a little kiss, grab a snack, like and subscribe and support me on Patreon, and let me tell you all about the world that time and space forgot. As to not bore y'all with essentially shot-by-shot analyses of all that we've been shown and can infer about the original game, I'll do my best to summarize what most of us probably already know. The original game, in its most literal form, is the mantle game that Tenna ROM hacked to make The Legend of Tenna. But that acts as an encapsulation of a much greater concept for both the prophecy being reinterpreted and abridged, as well as the world itself, as seen with the Forgotten Man and his home in the Forgotten Island, said to be a World Heritage Site. In other type words, this isn't much different from the Scratch. If you know, you know. As one can plainly observe, the meta-ness is especially strong here, fitting for what's currently understood to be the lowest plane of Deltarune's universe so far. From these basic facts and how they're presented, we also can observe that the original form of the world, the game that Deltarune was originally, had more expression, more freedom in it, where we can determine what we do. And yes, there is quite a lot to see in regards to this place, if you can even call it a place, its relations to both light and dark, as well as even Undertale specifically in a lot of regards, such as its enemies and even more murderous elements, even such involving the Forgotten Man. In regards to the 3 different expressions of the original game, yes, I'm counting the Secret Chapter 3 Death's Room as one of them, it is shown that they're not given exclusive passage, much less knowledge of this place. Even So Sorry got lost out of bounds on his way to the art club, again. In fact, getting lost is also a running theme like that, as the Flying Aces demonstrate, which makes into Des and ERAM for how they wound up getting lost and popped back up again. There are also more esoteric details like the gray grass, or this object in an unused version of the man's temple room, but that about covers it for the recap. Comment below how you think the original game or man room might come up in Chapter 5, because I'm on the fence about it myself. Now we go to the proper speculation, starting with the hypothesis that I've held the longest. What if the original game, or what its foundation sets on, is the depths? This concept was talked about more in the Chapter 2 era, but to briefly summarize, the depths is a proposed primordial plane of existence, essentially below the Dark World, is the well of darkness that the fountains spring from, and was co-opted by Gaster to reign over Deltarune's universe as we know it, as the Fountain and Prophecy texture is used and referred by him and related characters. Some expand this to include the depths as being also multiversal, permeating below and between all UTDR timelines, universes, and game mechanics, hence how Gaster and the Goners are the way they are, and how Determination links so tightly with darkness. This is what I believe the original game might be based in. The musical callbacks to the Holy and the ocean sound effect and mantle are chief here, as well as large bodies of water being a repeating motif within the 8-bit areas themselves. More specifically on the side of Gaster, Friend being made of program assets like the depths texture may be another tell, given one of its current roles is that of a gatekeeper of Mantle, and likely has its previous life as the real Mike, who managed other Cat Pedders minigames. Regarding games outside instead of within, as the original game and surrounding phenomenon demonstrate, the concept of the depths being multiversal could also serve to explain the many out-of-place Undertale callbacks, with the highest mechanical importance being that of the sword and weird roots, giving us the freedom that Deltarune otherwise lacked, but Undertale had in spades with its own barbaric equivalent, also set in death and the game's relation to the player, to the point of arguably having its own Genokara parallel in ERAM. Both roots, timelines, worlds, and even shadow crystals, all brilliant splinters in space-time in the games, brought to us by the miracle of determination. To a lesser extent, but also more cosmically speaking, maybe this is why 3 and soon 4 of our main secret bosses right now also take much from major Undertale characters. Even one of them is just straight up Gerson backing up his legend of his time as a monster warrior. They concern themselves with freedom, like how their sister game focused on them, and embody the traits of individuals that had to do with the path to exercise that freedom, although I doubt this was a conscious decision on any of their parts. Of course, there's the one exception being Jevil, a reason that I think y'all know well by now, and say it with him, folks, Because devil doesn't get anything. Additionally, I'd argue this is how the Mystery Man Fun event works in Undertale. Both Gaster and the Forgotten Man use the same method of wrong warping in rooms between to hide down tiny pocket dimensions in the depths or thereabouts. All that may seem sinister, but keep in mind that our friendly neighborhood Forgotten Man has some of this stuff as well, such as the Fleeing Soul, Ribbix, and Fan Troll monsters. On the subject of Undertale, and this being the Undertale series, this brings me to the next hypothesis. What if Deltarune was to be more like its predecessor? This one plays much more into the whole "this place was not what it used to be" thing, this alternative hypothesis being that for whatever reason, when Gaster finagled with Deltarune's world and narrative as we currently understand it, may have done a whole lot more than things like essentially replacing Noel's original role or casting Man Country into obscurity. With all the plain Undertale characters and concepts still in the open, and sharing the same Deltarune and the letters that make up its name, perhaps this world was supposed to be more like its predecessor, but having many of the more fantastical and subjective elements suppressed to the dark. On the side of the original game, from a gameplay perspective, the violence and branching paths could be brought back into play from this hypothetical Undertale-like state. Furthermore, this could explain things like the yellow lizards despawning themselves when the armored fish is killed, or just the six-petaled flowers existing at all. They're all aspects of Deltarune's version of the cast that had more in common with how they were in a distant timeline. It would even seem that going to the Dark World restores a rather integral part of this, their magical abilities and weapons. Regardless, magic is still part of their biology, evidently, but they don't seem to be able to use it for anything other than being alive. Despite much of this being stowed away in the dark that Deltarune puts so much focus on, let's not forget that the darkness that we know of exists in Undertale as well. But enough of this talk about a lowish, kinda dark place. Let's return to the place of greatest depths and darkness. I've got unfinished business with the Forgotten Man in his domain. Yes, I know I gave this doodle directing donut dunker his own video last time, but y'all know I forgot things. Really on brand there. To come in more organically from said previous, however, I'd like to propose that the whole memory motif going on with the man, as well as the game's main theme and its likely singer and Des, has to do with the world changing from how it originally was. What if a universe undergoing spatial or chronological changes, or even an individual going to a different universe, causes forgetfulness about the original origin, kind of like how resets do? This would explain why the Forgotten Man is both forgotten and forgetful, though not to undermine Chris's or potentially Gaster's part in it, as well as Sans and Papyrus in danger of forgetting their old home. As for that, this brings us from a character who's debatably a goner to our very first confirmed goner, Kid. A goner kid, lamenting about a world where they don't exist and requesting to be forgotten. This, of course, being the origin of the concept of goners and Gaster being supernaturally forgotten after his experiments, which seems to hold a lot more water nowadays. In that regard, what if goners aren't just copies that are, or otherwise, of lost people, with or without Gaster pieces, but ones whose homeworld is null? Hence the tenuous existence, as well as the similar and equal relation to both light and dark. Light ners for light, dark ners for dark, and gone ners for gone. Maybe. But, let's go back to Man Country for a bit. Now regarding Man Country itself from the point of monochrome, let's turn our attention to gray grass. Much like the Earthbound Beginnings bread roll glitch and the island that we view it from, we're probably going to do some wrong warping to get over there, whatever there is. But what there could be is a scrambled or ruined copy of something else, such as the Light World again. Perhaps we may need a true master of bread to access this, which might tie back into the man in that way, but I've got another idea, if not necessarily exclusive. What if this gunner-like wrong warp, being both evil and in opposition to the Forgotten Man's territory, could be accessed in the weird route, as that also has the disrespect of physical and worldly boundaries anyway. Alternatively, or even in conjunction to that, what if this is part of some original game content in Chapter 6, the presumed shelter-focused segment of Deltarune? Gaster already seems to take issue with the man in his quaint corner of the multiverse, so why not encroach even more than he already has? It's like a nature reserve being gentrified and flattened with soulless, non-native, suspiciously RGB, monochrome monoculture. Maybe ERAM will be waiting for us to have a picnic of candy and meat, so we may determine the fate of the timeline or some shit. But staying on topic, and speaking of meat, has anyone considered what the soundtrack of Chapter 6 might be like? Well, perhaps some of y'all might already know what I'm gonna talk about. What if we get the sound test songs from Undertale as full tracks in Chapter 6, but not in the usual style of area theme, specifically for places in or relating to the original game, hence 3 of which being entirely NES-style chiptune, being found by water, and the clear meta/program presentation. There's also Gaster's theme, but yeah. Imagine a swath of the original game being taken over by Gaster, and we have to listen to his crunchy tunes being cooked up in LMMS or something. As for more specifics, I have nothing original to share. Y'all probably already know anything that I might say here, as many have demonstrated, so how about we just move on to the guy who lives here as is. So, a hypothesis for the Forgotten Man and how he might be more important to Deltarune's cosmology than we might think. First, the early version of Man Country's central building. In it, in place of what we're familiar with, there once was what looked like a throne or possibly a totem of some sort, where the man would be standing otherwise. Moreover, it looks to be studded in ornamental eyes, which scary, considering the two worlds' relationship with sight, the possible, if contentious, inspiration for the organic line in Chapter 4's hallway, and Lousy being a lonely prince. What if the Forgotten Man is the otherwise absent King of the Dark, forced into exile after being usurped by the former royal scientist? This seeming antagonism made more interesting by the two strong if yet unexplained connection, my theories in his earlier video notwithstanding. And if we push things just a bit further, could this mean that his reign would extend as far as the depths would reach? Is this in a more broad sense, that the fact that the plane of Man Country is where the world's origins come from? Like, is this the point where all of Undertale and Deltarune universes branch from? Is this like a Crisis on Two Earths Earth Prime situation? Is this why the light world is a man's world? Well, perhaps I should stop here before I make a fool of myself with all this crack that I'm talking. Okay, one more. Not much to say, but I want to put it out there that the Skeleton Bros might, keyword being might, be from Man Country, given the green grass, forgetfulness, and possible Sans shortcut and other darkness powers? Maybe this is why they're not represented in Mantle? Okay, that's it. With as out there as some of these hypotheses are, it'd weigh on me if I didn't bring up any potential deficits that they might have. The man not being apparently present in Undertale does weaken the interpretation regarding the multiverse parts in his involvement. Likewise, the depths texture being noticeably absent, as of yet, does hurt, but at least we have the Roots prophecy for what that's worth. Also, I must stress that, even if Deltarune's world was more like Undertale for one reason or another, there are several reasons why it still wouldn't be nigh exact. I seriously doubt that's what Chris's Enjoying the Youthful Days title is actually talking about. Probably. And lastly, while the gray grass does thematically line up with Gaster down to its coloration, it does not have a programmed naming scheme, like anything else in the original game so far. I don't see any of these as deal breakers though, so I'm just gonna wait and see what comes for us. As soon as 5 days from now. Dear God. And with that, that is my final video before the release of Chapter 5. This era was very shorter than even Toby expected. It looks like the Chapter 5 era is going to be even shorter if you can believe it. Nevertheless, despite not getting to do more minor topics, I've covered everything that I needed to in this past year just in time. I plan on recording my blind playthrough of Chapter 5 like I did for 3 and 4, and we'll see what happens from there. Everyone, have fun, good luck, happy hunting, and don't get lost yourselves.